You don't actually hate hard work. You just hate the feeling of starting and failing again. Because deep down, the real reason you avoid discipline isn't laziness. It's the fear that even if you try, nothing will change.
Why your brain hates discipline.
Before you call yourself lazy, weak, or undisciplined, there's something you need to understand first. Your brain was never designed for the world you're living in right now. Thousands of years ago, your brain had one job: avoid pain, save energy, and chase comfort, because that's how you survived. Fast forward to today. That same brain is now living in a world where comfort is instant, unlimited, and everywhere. Hungry? You don't hunt. You tap your phone. Lonely? You don't talk to people. You scroll. Bored? You don't sit with your thoughts. You open TikTok. And here's the problem. Your brain can't tell the difference between this feels good and this is good for my future. There's a famous story about Steve Jobs. When he was building Apple, he wore the same black turtleneck almost every day. Not because it looked cool, but because he didn't want to waste mental energy on small decisions. He understood something most people don't. Your brain is lazy by default. Every decision you make, even tiny ones, drains willpower. So when you finally sit down to do something hard, your brain says, "Not now. Let's do it later." That's not self-sabotage. That's biology. Think about this. You want to work on your goals tonight, but your brain offers you an easier deal. Just one episode. Just 5 minutes of scrolling. Just start tomorrow. And the scariest part? Your brain isn't trying to ruin your life. It's trying to make you comfortable. That's why discipline feels so unnatural. You're literally asking your brain to do the opposite of what it evolved to do. Even David Goggins, someone people see as the definition of discipline, has talked openly about this. He said that every single day, there's a voice in his head begging him to quit, rest, and take the easy path. The difference isn't that disciplined people don't hear that voice. It's that they don't obey it. So here's the small but powerful lesson in this part. There is nothing wrong with you. Your struggle with discipline is not a character flaw. It's a predictable reaction to a world built for comfort. Once you stop hating yourself for it, you can finally start training yourself out of it. And that's the key word here: training. Because if discipline were something you were born with, people wouldn't change. But they do. Which brings us to the next part: the shift that changes everything. Why discipline is not a trait, but a skill.
Discipline is a skill, not a trait.
Here's the belief that quietly ruins most people's lives. I'm just not a disciplined person. That sentence sounds harmless, but once you believe it, you stop trying. Because why train something you think you were never meant to have? The truth is simpler and way more hopeful. Discipline isn't something you're born with. It's something you practice. Think about Michael Jordan. People love to say he was naturally disciplined, but that's not what his teammates remember. They remember him staying after practice. They remember him missing shots a lot and coming back the next day to fix them. They remember habits, not genetics. Jordan wasn't born disciplined. He trained discipline the same way he trained his jump shot, through repetition. Now zoom out to real life. Picture two college students. Both want better grades. Both say they care about their future. Student A studies only when they feel like it. Student B studies even when they don't, sometimes just 20 minutes. After a few weeks, nothing looks different. After a year, their lives don't even resemble each other. Not because one is smarter, not because one is special, but because skills compound and discipline is a skill. Even Kobe Bryant talked about this openly. He used to say confidence didn't come from talent. It came from knowing you put in the work. Discipline works the same way. Every time you do the hard thing, even poorly, you're teaching your brain, this is who we are. That's the lesson most people miss. Discipline doesn't show up before action. Discipline is built by action. Here's the small but powerful takeaway. Stop asking, why am I not disciplined? Start asking, what reps am I avoiding? Because once you treat discipline like a skill, failure isn't proof you're broken. It's just feedback that you need more practice. And now comes the part where almost everyone messes this up. They try to practice discipline at level 100 when they're still at level 1, which is exactly what we need to talk about next.
Trying to be extreme too soon.
Here's where most people destroy their discipline journey before it even starts. They don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they go from 0 to extreme overnight. One bad weekend, one burst of guilt, and suddenly, they promise themselves a new life. I'm waking up at 5 a.m. every day. I'm studying 8 hours straight. I'm going to the gym 6 days a week. No sugar, no excuses, new me. And for 2, maybe 3 days, it works. Then life hits. They miss one workout, one study session, one early morning, and their brain says, "See, you can't do this." So they quit completely. There's a story Arnold Schwarzenegger once told about beginners in the gym. New guys would come in, try to lift like professionals on day 1, destroy their bodies, disappear for weeks, and never come back. Arnold didn't build his body with extreme days. He built it with boring, consistent reps, done over years. Discipline works the same way. Here's the hard truth nobody wants to hear. Extreme goals feel impressive, but they require discipline you don't have yet. You don't earn discipline by declaring big intentions. You earn it by proving over and over that you can keep small promises to yourself. That's why trying to study 8 hours when you can't even focus for 20 minutes isn't ambitious. It's unrealistic. Let me put it this way. If your room is a mess, your emails are piling up, and you can't stick to basic routines. What makes you think you're suddenly ready for monk-level discipline? That's like walking into a boxing gym for the first time and asking to fight the champion. You don't need more intensity. You need the right starting point. Here's the small but crucial lesson. Discipline grows bottom up, not top down. You don't start with heroic effort. You start with effort you can repeat. Missing once isn't the problem. Setting standards you can't maintain is. And that leads us to the part that actually changes everything. If extreme discipline fails, what does the right starting point really look like? That's where we go next.
The small wins discipline ladder.
Here's what most people get wrong about discipline. They think motivation creates action. But in real life, action creates belief. And belief is what keeps discipline alive. That's why the fastest way to rebuild discipline isn't to chase big wins. It's to stack small wins. There's a simple idea popularized by James Clear. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Small wins are the foundation of that system. Because every time you finish a small task you didn't feel like doing, your brain learns something important. I can trust myself again. Let me give you a real-world picture. Imagine someone who hasn't studied seriously in years. They don't start with a 4-hour session, they start with 10 minutes. Day 1. Painful, awkward, unfocused. Day 3. Still uncomfortable, but doable. Day 10. It feels strange not to study. Nothing magical happened. No motivation surge, just repetition. That's the ladder. You don't jump to the top, you climb one rung at a time. Even Jerry Seinfeld used this idea early in his career. He didn't focus on being funny someday. He focused on writing one joke every day. He marked an X on the calendar for every day he showed up. Soon, the goal wasn't the joke. It was not breaking the chain. That's how small wins turn into identity. Here's the key lesson in this part. Small tasks aren't weak. They're strategic. Finishing builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence makes discipline automatic. When you choose tasks you can finish, even on bad days, you stop relying on willpower and start building consistency. So instead of asking, "What's the biggest thing I can do today?" ask this instead. "What's the smallest hard thing I can finish today?" Because once your brain gets used to finishing, quitting starts to feel uncomfortable, and that's exactly what we want. Now the question becomes, How do you make sure these small wins happen no matter what? That's where the next part comes in, turning discipline into non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables that actually work.
Here's where discipline stops being a feeling and starts becoming a system. Most people treat discipline like a debate. Do I feel like it today? Is today the right day? Non-negotiables remove the debate. They are the rules you follow no matter how you feel. Not extreme, not impressive, just consistent. There's a reason Jocko Willink talks so much about discipline as standards, not motivation. In the military, you don't negotiate with standards. You don't wake up and decide whether discipline applies today. That mindset works in civilian life too, just at a smaller, realistic scale. A non-negotiable isn't, I'll train for 2 hours every day. It's, I show up, even if it's for 10 minutes. You don't break the rule. You shrink the task, not the commitment. Let me give you a real example. Someone sets a non-negotiable to study 30 minutes a day. One night they're exhausted. Old mindset says, skip today. New system says, 5 minutes still counts. They sit down. 5 minutes turns into 10. Sometimes it doesn't. But the chain stays unbroken. That's the secret. Even Benjamin Franklin lived by this idea. He didn't chase perfection. He tracked simple daily virtues. Consistency over intensity. Discipline wasn't about being heroic. It was about being reliable. Here's the small but powerful lesson. Non-negotiables are minimums, not maximums. Missing once isn't failure. Quitting is. You don't ask, should I? You ask, how small can I make this today? When your brain learns that excuses don't cancel commitments, discipline stops feeling heavy. It becomes automatic. And once discipline is automatic, something deeper starts to change. You stop seeing discipline as punishment and start seeing it as self-respect. That's what we need to talk about next.
Discipline is self.
Most people think discipline is about being hard on yourself. Cold showers, early alarms, endless sacrifice. But real discipline isn't punishment. It's self-respect. It's how you treat yourself when no one is watching and no one is clapping for you. Think about this moment. You're tired. You had a long day. You could do the hard thing, or you could escape. Netflix, junk food, scrolling until you're numb. And in that moment, discipline isn't about productivity. It's about a quiet question you ask yourself. Do I respect myself enough to do what I said I would? There's a powerful idea from Marcus Aurelius. He wrote in his journal, not for an audience, not for motivation, that a good life is built by keeping promises to yourself, especially when it's uncomfortable. Not because it feels good, but because it builds dignity. That's what discipline really protects. Look at it this way. Being overweight all day, every day, is harder than exercising for 1 hour. Being broke, stressed, and dependent is harder than working on your skills for 2 hours. Living with regret is harder than doing the uncomfortable thing today. Discipline isn't choosing pain. It's choosing which pain you're willing to live with. Even Theodore Roosevelt understood this. He talked about the man in the arena, the person who shows up, gets dirty, fails publicly, but still earns respect because they tried. Not perfection, effort. That's self-respect in action. Here's the small but honest lesson in this part. Every disciplined action is a vote for your future self. Every avoided task quietly erodes trust in yourself. You will never regret doing the hard thing, only avoiding it. Once you see discipline as respect instead of restriction, you stop asking, how do I force myself? You start asking, what kind of person do I respect enough to become? And the fastest way to become that person is by how you start your day. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next.
Win the morning, win the day.
Here's a truth most people don't want to hear. Your day is usually decided before 9 a.m., not by your plans, not by your goals, but by what you give your brain first. Because the first hour of your morning sets your dopamine baseline, and dopamine decides what feels worth doing for the rest of the day. Think about 2 different mornings. Morning A. You wake up, grab your phone, scroll for 10 minutes. Your brain gets instant stimulation, zero effort. Now try to study, or work out, or focus. Everything feels boring, heavy, pointless. Morning B. You wake up and do something hard first. A short workout, a cold shower, a focused work block. It doesn't feel amazing, but afterward, everything else feels easier. Same day, different starting point. There's a reason Tim Cook starts his day before dawn. Not because waking up early is magical, but because doing something demanding early puts him in control before the world starts pulling at him. High performers don't win the day by hype. They win it by sequence. Hard first, easy later. Here's a simple analogy. Your morning is like a buffet. If you start with oatmeal, plain, boring, simple, your brain adjusts. But if you start with pancakes drenched in syrup, social media, dopamine hits, endless scrolling, everything healthy after that feels unbearable. That's why just 5 minutes of scrolling often turns into a wasted morning. Not because you're weak, but because you trained your brain to expect sugar. Here's the small but powerful lesson. Do one uncomfortable thing before you do anything comfortable. Not the hardest thing of your life, just something you'd rather avoid. This builds tolerance for effort. When you prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort early, discipline stops feeling like a battle. It feels like momentum. And once momentum is on your side, there's one final shift that locks everything in. You stop relying on willpower and start acting in line with who you believe you are. That's where we go next.
Become the disciplined version of you.
At some point, discipline stops being about effort and starts being about identity. Because people don't act based on what they want. They act based on who they believe they are. If you see yourself as someone who always quits, you'll quit, even with a good plan. If you see yourself as someone who shows up, you'll find a way, even on bad days. There's a reason Michael Jordan took losses personally. When he lost, he didn't say, "Bad night." He thought, "That's not who I am." So he trained harder. Not because he was motivated, but because winning was part of his identity. Discipline followed naturally. This works in ordinary lives too. Think of someone who says, "I'm not a morning person." That one sentence controls years of behavior. Now imagine the same person saying, "I'm the kind of person who does hard things early." Same alarm, same body, different identity. And suddenly, discipline feels less like force and more like alignment. Even James Clear explains this simply. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. You don't wait until you feel disciplined to act disciplined. You act disciplined, and your identity catches up. That's the order most people get wrong. Here's the small but powerful lesson in this part. Stop asking, "How do I force myself?" Start asking, "What would the disciplined version of me do right now?" Then do the smallest version of that action, not to be perfect, but to be consistent. Over time, those small votes stack up. And one day, you don't try to be disciplined anymore. You just are. Now let's bring everything together. Because discipline isn't about becoming someone else. It's about finally becoming someone you can trust. And that's exactly how we'll close this video.
Call to action within 24 hours.
Let's zoom out for a second. You don't need more motivation. You don't need another routine. You don't need to become someone else. Everything you need to build discipline comes down to one thing. Can you keep a small promise to yourself when no one is watching? There's a simple idea often attributed to Benjamin Franklin. He believed character wasn't built through big speeches or dramatic moments, but through daily conduct. Not what you intend to do, not what you talk about doing, but what you actually do, consistently, in ordinary moments. That's discipline. Think about your future self. 1 year from now. They won't remember the days you felt motivated. They'll live with the results of the days you showed up anyway. The workouts you didn't skip. The studying you didn't avoid. The small, boring choices you didn't see as important at the time. Those are the days that quietly changed everything. So here's the only thing I want you to do within the next 24 hours. Grab a piece of paper. Write down one small discipline you will do every day, no matter what. Something boring, simple, and finishable. 2. One comfort you will delay until after that task is done. That's it. Don't optimize it. Don't make it impressive. Just make it honest. Because discipline doesn't come from intensity. It comes from integrity. From proving to yourself, again and again, that your word still means something. Start small. Show up. And give your future self a reason to be proud. I'll see you on the other side of that decision. Remember, you don't need to become someone else to be worthy. You are a one-of-a-kind version of yourself, and only you get to decide where your life is headed. Right or wrong, it is still your choice. Practice discipline every day so that tomorrow's version of you is different from who you are today. If this video brought you something valuable, please like and subscribe so we can go further together.